We're going to start this video with taking a look at the Colosseum, which is by far the most recognizable of all Roman Empire landmarks. It is a double theater compared to the Greeks which made single theaters, very similar to if you've ever been to the Verizon Wireless Amphitheater, or back in the day it was Irvine Meadows. Those are theaters where they really take advantage of the landscape, where the seating can be along a slope and then you have kind of a flat area for the stage. Whereas in Rome itself is pretty flat. And so this really was a remarkable building project because we had to build the sides up so that seating could be accomplished. The original name of the Colosseum was the Flavian Amphitheater. And also on this spot, they had to drain, the Romans had to drain the lake that was here. So whereas we just talked about the Pont du Gard with man's control over nature, it's the same really with the Colosseum. Also with this view that you have here, you can see how Greek architecture plays a part in this structure. The bottom row is made up of Doric columns, the second layer Ionic, and the top layer or third layer of columns is created with the Corinthian columns. This was also a prefabricated structure made from concrete. And there were precast forms that were used, so this building came together very, very quickly, within about 5 years or so, actually about 10. And the capacity here was 80,000 people. So when we look at like the Memorial Coliseum or the Rose Bowl, we're looking at seating of 120,000 people, whereas the true Colosseum was really only about 80,000. Seating was very regimented at the Colosseum. When you look at how the seats were assigned, the very bottom of the arena would have been for the most important people, such as the emperor, top officials, priests. The next level would be the senators, the level after that the wealthy businessmen and freeborn citizens. Finally, the highest level, that would be the women, slaves, and non-citizens. You can see how organized it is. We have the Roman numerals marking the individual tunnels of entrance. And of course here, not only did we have gladiator fights, but also wild animal hunts and execution of criminals. The idea of the sand was that it was much easier to clean up the blood that way. In the High Empire, we're going to be taking a look at the Column of Trajan, completed about 113 AD. And it is located in what we call the Forum of Trajan. 22 levels of one continuous spiral. And this shows the two major campaigns that Trajan waged against the Dacians. The very base of it is a tomb. And as you go inside, there is a circular staircase which runs against the interior of the column. As the column moves northward, the scenes themselves get wider, and so that way it's much easier to read the top scenes from the ground. You can also see certain windows placed here along the outside. The figure that has his back to us is the personification of the Danube River, which is where the argument started with the Dacians. One last thing with the column of Trajan. Today there is a sculpture of St. Mark at the top. It is actually a Renaissance sculpture made in the 1400s. Previous to that, we thought it was perhaps a sculpture of Trajan that may have been toppled sometime in antiquity and melted down. One of another important building that we have from the Roman Empire is the Pantheon, and it's by far one of the coolest. The Pantheon is the best preserved of all Roman monuments, and taking a look at just the front colonnade here, we can see that the Corinthian columns are used, immediately letting us know that this is indeed a Roman structure, even though the very front of it looks like a Greek temple. Make sure not to mix up the words Pantheon and Parthenon, as the Parthenon is the structure on top of the Acropolis. This is probably one of the most influential buildings of the ancient world, as well as many other architects have tried to copy the dome that's on top. The Pantheon is home to many of the Roman gods. Originally a temple, then made into a church, and of course today it is an incredible tourist attraction. When you look at the front of it, you actually step down into the Pantheon today. Previous to this, back in the ancient times, there were a set of steps that would lead up to the Pantheon, but because of the rising street levels, you can see on either side of the Pantheon in this image that the sides are exposed to their original depth. The dome itself really is the most remarkable part of this building. It is 144 feet in diameter, which makes it the largest dome in the world. Actually, just 140 feet. It does get replaced as the dome of the Florence Cathedral. That's 144 feet in diameter. But it took them a couple hundred years to build the dome in Florence. They had actually, after the fall of the Roman Empire, lost the recipe for concrete and had no ideas on how to really construct a dome over that church. The hole that you see in the center of the dome here, which is a arch turned 360 degrees, this is called the oculus, or eye for the building, and it is the light source as well. The entire building is made of concrete. The inside of the ceiling is coffered to reduce the weight, but there are no windows along the outside because of the overwhelming weight for this building. The walls themselves are 20 feet thick. Now, Emperor Hadrian, the one who had this structure built, loved this building. This is where he would meet visitors, and as you walk into the front of the temple, you would not have been able to have seen the sides of it bulging out. Back in ancient times, there would have been buildings very tight on either side, and this would have been very much a courtyard entrance. And then as they step into the building itself and they see that it is perfectly round, it's a pretty amazing sight. A lot of geometry taking place here. And on April 21st, that's the birthday festival for the city of Rome. At noon on that day, light illuminates the front entrance of this structure. And here you can see some of the coffered ceilings up at the top, and a play of squares and circles on the floor. This is also the resting place for the Renaissance artist Raphael, and you'll be able to learn about him in Art 5 if you take that class. He's one of the three great artists of the High Renaissance, along with Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. Raphael just happened to be a very, very friendly artist. Everyone loved him. He did works for several of the popes, and when he died prematurely, around the age of 36 or 37, he got a state funeral and was buried here at the Pantheon. And with that, I'm going to stop this video, and we'll go to part 3 and finish up the Roman Empire.